Not all superheroes wear capes. Some wear wellies. Wellies.
Hello everyone and welcome to the James Conway Experience. We're joined today by an absolutely wonderful woman, a woman that Darren has met previously before. It's my first time to meet her and I'm delighted to have her here in Sligo. Jean Murray, and some of you may know Jean from the very outset of the scamdemic, I like to call it, the mass psychosis. She was trying her best to highlight to everyone that this was the height of nonsense. And thank you very much, Jean, for being brave. Thank you for winding up in court. Thank you for fighting the good fight. And I think it's important that we recognise that there were people who were right and there were people who were talking sense at the time. And now that it's all over, how are you feeling now?
Oh, wow. Hey, James, thank you very much for that introduction. It's something that I think about all the time. It's every day, because it's not even over. That side of it was over. What they did to, the people locking people down, taking away our freedom, at first sight, you know what I mean? All them terrible things that happened, was crazy. But they've just moved it on to a different level now. So you can see it going to a different stage where it's actually, they're setting in place all the mass surveillance. And so kind of like to think about it as they did little pieces at a time, but the main goal was inevitably to take away our freedoms, and our rights. And our land.
Have they accomplished a good bit of it already?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Well, when you think about all the policies that are in place at the moment, and in the systems, our departmental systems of government, and all the policies are in place, when you have to deal with any system, be it the health system or be it the justice system, and you are looking for justice for any reason in those systems, you will see, that it's absolutely impossible to get a resolution of righteousness when you go through it, and you're like, Gina Mac, and when I read through all these policies, it's designed absolutely not to help the victims or people who are looking for justice, and in relation to freedom of speech as well, or freedom of your actions or freedom of travel, all of these things, is designed to, prevent us having those freedoms easily, and absolutely to protect all of those policies, and the people who authorize those policies are completely protected, and you're like, how can a person get justice in this, from any issue that you might have then as a citizen, a parent, or a worker, realistically, we're supposed to go along in life, and if we have issues, then this is what they want us to do. Not have a problem with the issues. Just, there's nothing you can do about that, and just bury it, but not standing up for the issues or the systems that are wrong in our society gives you no resolution. And there has to be resolutions, and the resolutions are based on truth. So, everything has to match up for us to all feel comfortable in our lives, then okay, things are going okay. So in the past 5 years is absolute chaos, because I feel that's the basis of what's wrong with, or what people do get, even if they didn't get the whole COVID scamdemic at the time, they do get there's something seriously going wrong in our systems. What's going on? They know there's something wrong. They can't put their finger on it,
I was very, very alarmed with how quickly it went very totalitarian.
Yeah.
And I'll be truthful about it, how little pushback there was against it.
Yeah.
To me, that was very frightening.
It's a very scary time. I first knew almost immediately there was something very serious, sinister or evil going on. And I tell you why, because I had done my own research about from a personal issue on vaccines prior to 2020. And I was only coming to the awareness and realization about childhood vaccines and the toxins that were in them and the harms that they could cause. And I was like, Jeannie Mac, now I'm 58 years of age. In 2019, my youngest was 15 at the time, and like so my kids now are 35, 36, 30 and 21 now. And so I'm a mother all of these years. All of my children are vaccinated, and there were quite a lot of things that I could look at back now and say, oh my God, and see the comparisons of when they were vaccinated and different side effects and reactions they had. But I couldn't believe that I had gone through this all of those years as a mother without any knowledge of what was in these vaccines and what they were capable of doing. But I did start to research, and I did start to discover a lot of things in 2019. So when it came to the March 2020, now I was watching this, the COVID closely, because the coronavirus, it was called then, because my son was going, and his wife and my 2 grandchildren were going on their first cruise holiday. And they were going into February. And so we heard the news in January and stuff that, this coronavirus doing the rounds and whatever. And I'm watching this, and, one of the first things I noticed that although the news was saying what was going on, there was nothing in our environment to say. So the news was telling you there's a deadly virus going on, but nothing in our environment was showing there was a deadly virus going on, because you would see people, if there was a deadly, fast spreading virus, it would be reaching Ireland as quick as they were saying, you know what I mean? But anyway, there wasn't any evidence about that. But nevertheless, I'm watching the news about this because I was hoping they'd go on their cruise in February. Anyway, they did get to go on their cruise into February, and all was well. But when they came back, and I think it was towards the end of February then, things were starting to lock down in America. Policies were put in place, legislation was being put in place to, it was being called a national security threat at the time, the coronavirus, which then they changed to the COVID. And then at that then, obviously looking at the news on the TV again, we could see China, we could see the people, in bags, and we could see Italy then, the people in, body bags, or we could see body bags. We couldn't actually see people. But it just didn't seem real to me, because it was very false to me. And I don't mean that to be saying, like, why did I think it was false and other people saw the seriousness of it? I don't know. Maybe I watched a lot of TV. I thought it was, it was very, like other programs, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, in our environment, we were seeing no signs of this deadly disease. There was nobody dying in Ireland in March 2020. And then it was very soon after that, then they were talking about it, and it was on the Sky News. And I used to listen to all these radio stations, Sky News, the News Talk. I don't listen to any of them anymore. But Sky News was having an interview with Ian King and Pascal Soriot, and that was in April, actually, of 2020. And Pascal Soriot said, they were talking about this virus. We're going to have a vaccine in the arms of the UK people by the end of October 2020, November at the very latest. And at that, it just hit me. I said, oh my God, this is all about a vaccine. They want to get and they were talking about vaccinating the world. I said, why do they want to vaccinate the world? Why on earth? And then from what I had learned about the vaccines, and I was beginning to know, hang on a minute, these are bloody toxic, unnecessary anyway. So why would they want to give this? And this was a new technology. They were untrialed, untested. They had some sort of short trial, but for a few people, and though that wasn't successful anyway for those poor people. But anyway, that's what they wanted to put in the arms of the whole world. So I just immediately felt a sense of evil and shock. And I said, oh my God, they really want to do harm to the people. That was my first feeling of the whole thing. And then I was looking at the airwaves to see what I could find. Is anybody else talking about this? And first one I found was Richie Allen, believe it or not. And he was saying some really good things about, giving the news, the real news, what was going on as such on the ground. So that was really good. And then Gemma O'Doherty speaking out. So I said, oh my God, I have to go see, and Dee Wall, I have to go see these people speak. So I found my way into, and everything was locked down at this time. I think it was April 2020 and May then. And I found myself heading to Dollymount Beach to see Gemma O'Doherty and Dee Wall speak. And John Mortis was there actually as well.
Mm-hmm.
And now the things we had to do to get out there and hide and park my car miles up Fairview and, you know, kind of sneak down in the shadows. I mean, it was crazy times really when you think about it, because you weren't allowed to go anywhere. And of course, that particular protest or meeting held by Gemma O'Doherty was obviously, you know, the police were arresting anybody going near site, you know what I mean? So they didn't want to happen at all, you know. But I heard her speaking, Dee Wall and John Mortis, and I said, okay, yeah, this is a scam, and I knew it. And then, so that was great. And then we started going into the GPO. Jem, I think, and Dee Wall went to the GPO, and then that was on the Saturdays, and we went in there every Saturday to try bring awareness to people, you know, have some leaflets printed out. There's another couple of lads came there as well called Stand Together, and we'd go in there every Saturday just to try bring awareness to people. Look, this is what's happening. It's not what the government is telling you it is. And please don't lock down your business. Don't listen to them. Don't let them close down your businesses. You know, so that was one of the reasons. And the other reason I went in was to try and convince people that there was something going on with this vaccine and please do not take it. And the reason I wanted to go out there and tell the public was in order to convince my own children, my own family, because I felt if the wider network realized, oh, hang on a minute, we're not going to take this vaccine, my own family wouldn't either. Because I'm not an educated woman by no means in any level, third degree level. And look, I'm thank God for that really, because my education is on the street. But what I did know, it wasn't hard to find out. You know, you just have to start reading stuff about things and, you know, and seeing, you know, people's resources and, you know, and you can base these facts that they're giving you and information by their resources, and you can double check. And it was easy to find that there was something terrible, serious going on. So that was the reason I did that. And it was just like I was on this mission, you know, and I just had to go in every Saturday and just, you know, focus on this and try get this information out there, you know.
I couldn't believe how, you know, when they opened the bottles, the information leaflet said blank page on it.
Yeah.
And like, we're joined by a butterfly. Like, how could any doctor or pharmacist in good faith say, I'm going to administer something that I don't have ingredients for, I don't have information for, you know. But there was no, how do I say, that wasn't hidden knowledge.
No.
It was an experimental drug. That wasn't hidden knowledge.
And they used that term, didn't they,
Yeah.
on the news and stuff.
But you see, this is where, you know, if you write off anyone who's telling you contrary information and say they're a conspiracy theorist, well, what is the conspiracy? Oh, they're telling me that this is an experimental drug and there's no information on it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was.
Absolutely. Now, there's a great girl on Substack, Sasha Latipova, and she has done extensive research on all the hows and the whys of this development of the mRNA technology vaccine. She used to work in Big Pharma herself. So she became suspicious. She left a few years ago anyway, but she became suspicious immediately about this. So she, in her information, this was a military operation. And the Department of Defense came to Merck Pharmacy in 2017 and said, we want you to make up, be ready for a national security threat, you know. So you'll need to have a product that will, you know, help people, cure people, or whatever they wanted, or, you know, for everybody. Their national security threat, they had decided was this pandemic. Now, this is in 2017. Now, this was already in the planning, but because they had done the Event 201, but the national security threat was a pandemic that they had decided was going to happen based on a computer model that they had drafted of what a pandemic or, a virus, a deadly virus will look like. It was not from a real pathogen at the time. right? So that was, first of all, this was an absolutely prepared operation to have an mRNA technology vaccine in the arms of everybody. And why they wanted to do that is it wasn't for good purposes anyway. Do you know what I mean? And you're right, they didn't have to have the information of the ingredients on these vaccines. And the sad part about it was, and again, you're absolutely right, that, pharmacists and everybody was, that was working at giving these vaccines, you're right, they gave out these vaccines. People had not got properly informed consent because they had no idea what was in this vaccine, what was going in their arms.
No.
They were just told, oh, it's absolutely approved, it's safe, and signed there. They did not know what ingredients they were taking in their arms. And, God help everybody since then. I think if you knew nothing, we have seen an increase in cancer. We have seen an increase in heart attacks. We have seen an increase in sudden deaths, since 2021. And in the March 2020, they had, based on what happened was with the how they convinced the Irish people, I guess, they decided that, Una McGurk covered this with Eddie Hobbs there recently. They decided, the government gave an order for all of the old people to be removed from hospitals, whether they were sick, cured or dying, God help them, and back into their nursing homes. So it didn't mean whether they had the virus or they didn't have the virus, but they were sent back to the nursing homes because they wanted to free up the hospitals for the income of sick patients, right? And but those poor old people were sent back to the nursing homes and the whole lockdown was on at the time, if you remember, in March 2020, April 2020, and they were isolated. Families weren't allowed in. The nurses or the carers administering care to these people in nurses' homes were barely able to give them what they needed to feed them, and they were left in their rooms by themselves all day long and all night long. So they did start to die because a lot of them then, you see, when you isolate somebody and they're old and there's no circulation, so obviously they're going to develop respiratory issues. And, so then they were getting the medications. And the medications that were being administered, and Dr. Marcus de Bruin has covered this as well, was remdesivir and midazolam.
And what did they do?
Well, they actually bring on end of life. They break down your kidneys and they paralyze your system, and they cause people to die. So there was a lot of end of care practice put in place, and do not resuscitate put into place for the old people. So then we were having massive deaths in the nursing homes in Ireland, and everybody got very, very scared then, because they thought it was the virus that was killing them. Because again, we got the tests, the PCR tests, which were fraudulent, and they were shown that the people were COVID positive. Some of them were COVID positive, and so. But should God help them? It was just unbelievable. So people easily bought that story and then went along with that. And then next of all, it was the vaccines. Were coming out, and everybody was saying, "We better get these vaccines." So it was just an unbelievable time, absolute unbelievable time. And no official was talking about it. We actually had to go to the hospital there. The hospitals were empty for that whole year, that period after that. And the sad part about it was you couldn't get anybody to speak out in a hospital to say the hospitals were empty, and that's all the workers that was involved in the hospitals. But my daughter fell off.
Why do you think that is? Because I've spoken to a few people.
Yeah.
And they would have been of the same opinion that it was not crowded.
No, it wasn't. I actually did a video myself, and many people did. Because they did say the flu and everything disappeared. But there were lots of people actually advised to stay at home and not go seek medical care. And a lot of people then died from those type of complications too, of medical neglect in that way, you know. So a lot of people didn't go to the hospitals for sure, but you probably would have had to go for a break or things if you had no option. I happened to find ourselves in the hospital in 2020. My daughter fell off a horse and she hurt her hip quite badly. And it was completely empty. It was actually Christmas Eve 2020. It was completely empty. The waiting room area, everything was empty. You know, we had a consultant that then came, which had examined by a doctor, a consultant then came to give her scan in her tummy to see did she burst out. I mean, you never heard the likes of it. You'd never get that. Do you know what I mean? There were so many staff available. You know, why did they not tell? I think there was a combination of their own fear and confusion as well. Do you know what I mean? Embarrassment. You know, I'd say a lot of the staff were embarrassed because they weren't busy with this COVID crisis. You know what I mean? So
they were put on a pedestal as well. Like, I mean, they were
put on a
praised
pedestal.
and
Well, if you
candles lit for them at 8 o'clock, and
you know, the applause thing,
yeah.
I mean, so it was probably very difficult for them to turn around and go, well, actually, you know,
there was the whole lot of it was just, it was unbelievable, you know. But so then they started then with the vaccines then roll out after that. And I think in England, actually, the first vaccines were November 2020 that people start getting them in the UK. And we were shortly behind then in early 21. It was shocking, you know. But at the time when I went in to do the protests, it was an unbelievable time as well. And I'll go back to the evilness of things. There was a sinister feel in the air about it. And because a lot of the times when you're standing at the GPO, and a few times then we went around to Leinster House and wherever we walked, but we were absolutely attacked by people all in black. A lot of them were all in black and their face covered. And I remember one assault, one attack, like, and I'm only an ordinary woman, you know, my mother and I was grandmother, and like, you know, I'm only standing here not saying derogatory things. I'm not saying, you better do this, you better do that. I'm just saying, look, here is information. Go and look at this source. Go and look at that source, as was all the other people that was with me. Do you know what I mean? And we would be very polite, you know, and obviously not aggressive.
Have you noticed lately as well?
Yeah.
It's nearly an insult that's thrown. If you say to someone, do your own research or that, they'll laugh at you and say, oh, you're one of those.
Yeah.
I'm one of what? A person who tells you should inform yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be truthful, Jean, I look around at the society at the moment, and as I says, I think in that period they were given all the opportunity in the world to show themselves for what they were. It wasn't pleasant. It wasn't pleasant at all.
There was an occasion, and I think the lockdowns were over at this stage, and like, you know, there was two women I would have known, well, a lot of women I know, you know, and but I remember seeing this one woman I hadn't seen her in a couple of years, and I was very fond of her in her past. I was in the horse world, you know, we were the mothers around the place, and I bumped into her. Oh my God, I haven't seen her in ages. I went to give her a hug, and she went, oh, no, don't do that. And I was like, okay, right. That just showed me, well, hang on a minute. You know, that's not very, that just like showed me probably what she taught me all the time anyway. Look, I don't like enough to give it a hug anyway. So look, it's grand. The COVID is in. I'm not going to give it a hug. And there's another girl I was very fond of. She was a hairdresser as well when I was young, and a lovely, lovely girl. And I would have been quite close to her as well. And a very similar thing as well at another garage. And I was like, oh God, I can't believe this. And I just found I found that very hurtful. Look, I was grand. I'm thick-skinned. You know, I'm all right. It wasn't the end of the world. But I just thought, hang on a minute. These people pretended that they like you all these years. And then when it comes to an opportunity, you can actually say, hang on a minute, I actually don't want to give you a hug. Look, just tell me you don't like me in the first place. Don't use the COVID as a guise. But it did change people. And, you know, I mean, it was quite sad. I mean, I went into...
Take your time, you're all right.
Quite emotional, actually. When you bring it all back. But I went into Super Value. Like I would have gone to my neighbour. I used to shop for my neighbour. She's a lovely woman, Lorna, God bless her. She had a kidney transplant, so she couldn't go out. And I was delighted to her shopping for her to go into Super Value in Ratoath Village. And I'm not going to tell you a word of lie. You know, you need thick skin. You know, absolutely thick skin. You know, because I wasn't wearing a mask. And you see, the thing about it is, I wasn't sick. I never had a sniffle. Do you know what I mean? If I was sick, my dad had undergone cancer a few years ago. We had the chemotherapy. And I said, look, we all have enough cop on to know we're not going to get near anybody sick, especially if we have any sort of illness on us. You know, so I refused to wear the mask for my children, I'm going to tell you, James, above most of all. The thoughts of even having my child masked in the school system, the masks absolutely said to me, what a kick in the face to my children. My children were nothing. They were going to put your mask on you. And people couldn't see exactly what this was, that they were masking us. And it was nothing to do with a virus that they were masking us for. There was absolutely nothing to do with a virus.
Remember at the very beginning, they actually turned around and said masks make no difference.
Absolutely.
You know, and then science changed.
And then all of it, Fauci, didn't he say, no, your mask? There was, oh no, the masks are absolutely, no, they don't do anything. And then next of all, it was, and even Trump in those early days, oh yeah, no mask. And then it was, oh yeah, put your mask on. Like, it was mad. But that was the main reason I wouldn't wear a mask. And it was to show my children, you don't need to be afraid. It was that simple. And I walked in there when I've been in there numerous times, and this manager was trying to obviously every time, where's your mask? No, excuse me, you know, I'm not wearing a mask. You've no right to be in. This particular morning, pounded over to me. Young fella now, about, I'd say, could have been mid-30s at the time, late 30s maybe. Where's your mask? I don't wear a mask. You know you have to wear a mask. No, I said I don't. I said I'm exempt. I was very polite. And went about my business to whatever. So by the time I got over the fridge, he came over and gave me another warning. He said, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the shop. I said, I'm sorry, I know my rights. I'm not leaving the shop. I said, I'm doing my shopping and I'm doing my neighbour's shopping. And so I went off to the fridges, whatever. And next of all, 3 Gardaí came in and they came over to me. And a few minutes later, came over to me and said, oh, there you are. Is there a problem here now? And I said, oh, hi, Gardaí. No, it's not a bit of a problem. And, you won't wear a mask. And I said, that's because I'm exempt. I have a medical condition. Oh, can we see your letter? He said, of course you can. So I gave them medical, whatever I had there in my purse. And they were saying, oh yeah, that's grand. Happy enough with that. Not at your man. No, she's grand. And off they went. But it was the most degrading thing, do you know? And you're a grown one, like I'm 58 now. What age was I then? Like 53. And you've got this little dog ignorant piece of scum treating you like a piece of shit because the government told him to.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Not because he's going from any sense of logic or that he cares about anybody. He didn't care about me. My shopping bill was expensive. My neighbour's shopping bill was quite expensive. You know, we were good shoppers there. He didn't give a damn about me and, as a customer and all this falseness. So we want to look after our customers. A load of, lies.
No,
basically.
the mask is a funny analogy because their masks slipped.
Their masks slipped.
Do you know? Like I remember we were driving to Ballina one day and we were stopped and the guard says, where are you going? And I refused to engage with them during the period because as far as I was concerned, I thought they were just the dog of the totalitarian state. But she spoke to him. She says, we're going to shop in Aldi. Okay, he says, no problem at all. So went into Ballina and we were stopped on the way home. He says, where are you going? Oh, she says, I was speaking to you on the way. We went shopping to Aldi there. Opened the boot. He wanted to see the shopping. And I thought to myself, like Rose has never been in bother, ever, do you know? And there you have someone who's working for the HSE, minding people with disabilities, who's basically being searched to see if she's telling a lie about shopping.
It's caught, isn't it?
But you see, the danger to me is if you have adults, supposedly intelligent people who are willing at the drop of a hat to question everything you're doing, Yeah, no, it's no good.
And you see, you're absolutely right, James. The whole thing was scary. The thoughts that you could be locked up
Yes.
for standing up for righteousness. That was like, that was a big deal for me. I mean, I remember like when I was raising my son and we were growing up, we grew up in Cabra actually. And so Anthony, my son, was in 13 before we left Cabra. And when you're raising your son, you want to make sure, I never want to see my son locked up. I never want to see you do anything that's a crime that will get you locked up. You know what I mean? I would hate to be locked up. Yeah. To me, to go to prison and be in a small cell and be locked up and your freedom taken away from you, it was always a thing for me, and you raise your kids, to be honest and just so that they can live life free. And so for this threat that your freedom was gone was a huge thing for me. And I was like, oh my God, like, what is happening? Like, and it was very like, all those procedures by the police, the Gardaí, it was like East Germany, 1932. Yes. I was reading a lot of books. It was exactly the same tactics. And I was like, how can nobody see this is wrong? How can nobody see this as wrong? And I blame the last, obviously, 40 years, because obviously it's all been designed to subtly get us to do little things each time to give up our freedoms, different little things, that happened. Different big things that happened then that they would put in new policies that would take away your freedoms.
The mad thing is a lot of these were actually unconstitutional from the very off.
Yes.
That's what I couldn't fathom,
And why didn't it bother anybody?
That
it was unconstitutional.
Yeah.
But it's the totalitarian tiptoe, that's what they call it. It's just little steps all the time. And then you wind up in a situation, what we wound up in. And to be honest about it, I don't see it stopping.
No, I don't see it stopping.
I think what we're doing here, I believe, will be banned.
Yeah.
Very shortly. I think they'll have a hate speech bill and they will make it impossible to hold something like this. I think they'll ban congregation.
Yeah.
I think they'll bring in a ban that unless you have a license for a congregation, you won't be allowed to have. That's my humble opinion.
But how are they going to go about that, seeing as you have those fundamental rights written within the Constitution?
Well, they've already shown that they don't care.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate thing is the populace has shown that they don't care.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, we're in an absolute minority. Like you were,
that's right.
You were doing your work above in Dublin, trying to highlight this. You were a minority. We were up here trying it. We were a minority.
Yeah.
The vast majority of people, if a government says to them jump, will say how high. And they've proven that time and time again.
And you see, I'm just wondering, like, how in such a short time did they forget? Like, when I was growing up in Cabra, my dad, he died, God bless him, there a few years ago of cancer, but he was like, there was great, obviously young, strong Irish men around at the time. You know what I mean? They grew up in Dublin City in the tenements, actually. A lot of the people that came from or lived in Cabra came from the tenements of various places in Dublin City. And my dad was one of them. And one of the things, like, they were quite clever. They were not educated, but they were very clever. They knew what was going on. And maybe because it wasn't too far a time from 1916, but they were all very patriotic lads. They knew what was right and what was wrong. They knew, like my dad, for instance, when the Jack Lynch signed, I'll never forget, I still remember, I have a great actual memory. I was 5 years of age when Jack Lynch signed in us to EEC, and my dad jumped off the chair, tore his newspaper up and was livid. And he was like, oh my God, the ruination of Ireland, the ruination of Ireland. And he wasn't wrong. And when you look at that, the origins of the EEC then, and you, like I was reading up that recently, so you got two fellas there, Schumann and Monet, who had this design to have a United States of Europe. Mm-hmm. And it was initially set up so that trade could be easy. And that was the guise they sold it on. But in their writings, it was going to be, they wanted to completely, it's going to be under rule of authority. Do you know what I mean? So it was, they already knew. So there's a question come up there recently as well about De Valera. Was he good or was he not good? He had to know, because it was in the 60s that Schuman and Monet set up anyway the EEC, and they were, all this writing was in place, all these policies are in place, and where they wanted Europe to go, or to be the states of Europe and have the control of all the resources. So De Valera had to know, but he never said anything. And then obviously Jack Lynch was in place. Now I don't know I didn't delve too much into De Valera myself in those last few years or anything, but I do know that he had to know. And Jack Lynch obviously had to know, signing into the EEC, where these fellas wanted to take Ireland. And they wanted to take our resources. Yes. And they wanted to take all our resources. And then, like, all our land rights. So, talking about the Constitution, overwriting the Constitution, like, they just are going in, and it's legalised. They've legalised theft, basically, what's after happening. Do you know what I mean? So, they've shown they can do anything, but those load of men in 1972, like my dad, and my dad was a big fella now. He was 6'4", 6'5" probably, and he was worked in a butcher's, an abattoir. So he carried the cattle on. He was a big, strong fella. And when the boy racers, we had 6 of us, all girls, when the lads were racing the cars up and down Carnlough Road, Dublin, North Dublin, my dad would literally go, and one night he'd had enough of them, and he picked up a railway sleeper out of our garden and went into the road and threw it in the road and stopped the car dead. And of course, all the lads run, jump out. That's the type of men you had at the time. They weren't afraid of anything. And we were actually surrounded by big families, and all the fellas were all the same, Then, and he had a good job, my dad. He was a butcher, as I say, all his life. He changed his job in 1977. He used to work in Buckley's, and he had a good job in Buckley's, but he was offered a management position in this new meat packing plant in Grand Canal Street. And he took that job, and I think it was obviously early 1977. He was 10 weeks in that job, and it was closed down. And remember you're only a young fella, so you won't remember. But that was the recession that was started then in 1977. And the EEC, those guys promised prosperity for Ireland. And the first thing they did was absolutely go about annihilating the working class man of Dublin, of Ireland. And all those 100,000 Irish young men were put out of work. Your age, James, imagine that.
See, we're beginning to see the end points of it. You're looking now at a European army as a very, very logical conclusion for me. Mm-hmm. And I'm watching, there's a channel there, Joe.ie or something. We had a young fella here was speaking about it yesterday. They were going around the streets of Dublin asking young fellas, would you die for Ireland? And I thought, you're doing that for a reason. Mm. You're starting that conversation because there's going to be a recruitment drive very shortly. Mm-hmm. In my book, I don't see how this ends any other way than war.
Yeah. And, I think they want the war, don't they? I mean, talking about, like, even with the open border situation and the influx of foreign nationals into our country, mm-hmm. from third world countries, without limits, and the things you see on the TV and the assaults that people are, receiving from these foreigners and different things. And it's lots of crime anyway. And no justice then for the victims. The usual, back to no justice. And these people are walking free. And it's absolutely going to incite racism in people. We're not racist. Irish people are not racist. Do you know what I mean? We have a Saint Martin, don't we? And he was African, but we're definitely not racist in that sense. But and there's another thing that I would like to say about racism as such, and this is all in the education system now. This all critical race theory, and all the rest of it, and our white, supremacy that we're entitled. We're white entitled, and I read a book recently. It's only a novel because I like to read a novel every now and again, and it was Jodi Picoult, and it was Small Great Things, I think it was. But anyway, the theme of the story was racism, but what the young black nurse was going through was absolutely no different to what my poor father went through as a white Catholic Irishman in Ireland. Never mind the Irish people who went across to America and, where no Irish need apply. It's poverty that is discrimination. It's discrimination against poverty. It's like people who have no money or no means are easily targeted, by these, authority figures or anybody with money or, position or power can easily target anybody. And if only people would realize it doesn't matter whether you're black, yellow or white. If you haven't got a penny in your pocket there and you have no defense when it comes to when they start taking off your land off you, how are you going to fight these people? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the thing, because at the end of the day, in my experience, through various seekings of justice, it costs you.
Yes.
It absolutely costs you. It costs you for any things that you might need, reports, assessment, backup, expert witnesses.
Yeah.
It's thousands. Do you know what I mean? And, so when you have no money, and it's back to the justice again and righteous justice, and if something happens to it's all very well coming on at you, something happening to you, but if something happens to your children and you want justice, because injustice is given the resolution to the problem that happened or the situation in the first place. It's a resolution, and we're all entitled to a resolution, so in that's it. I mean, this is what it's, all about happening. Sorry, lost my train of thought there for a second. But then this is why they're bringing us back to the high taxes, the cost of living. Every one of us have week to week, nearly living week to week, and I mean, no matter what income you're on, then, you're paying your mortgage and your costs and your different things. When it comes to people losing their rights, they're not going to have any means to fight these rights, So yeah, we are in a terrible, terrible position, and they're not going to stop until, you see, the land grab that they're doing through the taxing situation and the property tax and the inheritance tax, and they're not stopping. They're higher and higher, and it's coming here. And so, sorry, back to my first train of thought there when I was saying I came from that era in the 60s and 70s of poverty and patriotism, because our parents knew that they weren't, they were, a lot of them, their parents were born in these early 1900s, late 1890s. They knew what it was like for the Irish to be downtrodden under the Crown rule at the time, have no food, have no money, have no rights, have no voice. We knew that, we were raised into that family. We knew that's the way it was. How did a lot of the population forget, from then?
I think it's the fact that the people were living, they had lived through it and they remembered it. Just pause for one second, Darren.
Yeah.
I just want to go and get a bit of fresh air. Sorry about that if you notice a little cut there. I went outside, so I did. Jean, tell us a little bit about the economic situation, because there's a massive amount of small businesses that were lost during the COVID period. They have not returned. From our perspective down here, you're seeing pub closures, you're seeing closures of small little kind of knick-knack shops and all of that.
Shocking.
How is it looking up your end of the country as well?
It's the same. So one of the reasons I actually came out as well was what alerted me to, as well as knowing that it was about a vaccine, I knew it was about destroying the economy in March 2020. And the reason I knew that was because it started in 2008 when we had the recession, where the government decided to bail out the banks. And with that, absolutely annihilated the independent Irish builder at the time. And my husband was in construction, he's in roofing. And so he did a lot of jobs for the big guys, if you will. And all these big companies were shut down. So it was absolutely unbelievable. We knew kind of it was coming because it had happened in America first. So, but needless to say, there was no money coming in. They shut down. They couldn't pay your money. Now you had to pay your little guy your money, so it almost absolutely annihilated my husband's business. So we were kind of still young at the time. My husband was only in his 40s. So I was only early 40s, 40 myself. And so we said, right, look, just we'll battle through the storm. But many people of the age 50s and 60s and that in that period who would have been well set in businesses lost their homes right beside us. There was lovely, lovely people just losing their homes, couldn't pay their mortgages, and they were absolutely put out. I was absolutely shocked by this. And then you see the government saying they're going to bail out the banks, and you've got all these lovely people, families, young parents with their children being put out of their mortgages that they paid something like 600,000. A lot of people paid for their home in my area. And there was no mercy for them. And that was one of the things that got me start writing into the government then. And I said, this is disgraceful. This is happening. That's happening. Don't be doing this. Don't be doing that. Wrote into Pat Kenny, Joe Duffy, whoever would listen. Nobody was listening. So we battled down the hatches and we had to work very hard to pay our mortgages and do all that. As we did, as I said, we had youth on our side. A lot of the people in that older age bracket, there was a lot of suicides, a lot of marriage breakups, because all that money stress is absolutely really difficult on a marriage. We had that too, but we battled through anyway. So in 2019, as it was coming, it was a hard few years. That was a hard few years. We had huge mortgage debt ourselves. 2019 came and I said, oh my God, I can see a light of a tunnel. You kind of have enough money left over, after you pay a mortgage. This was getting better. And that was late 2000. That was September 2019. October. And then next of all, this comes in with we're going to shut down your businesses. And I was like, no way. I said, no way. Don't do it. Don't do it. You can't do it. That's going to ruin you're not going to come back from this. And it's not going to be for 3 weeks. How long is it going to be for? And that was the beginning of so the first part of destroying the small businessman was in 2008. And this was the second part. I knew straight away they were going after finishing the middle class, the small middle class man. You know what I mean? The likes of myself, my husband, the shop owners, the pub owners, the restaurant owners in their village. And like that as well, they were really struggling to survive. And then you've got the rates and rents of all these premises, and lots of them closed down. A lot of people had difficulty in filling these spaces again. They're only starting to put them back in there now. The problem with that is, obviously we all know in the last couple of years then, the cost of food has increased. So now people's spare money, they don't have spare money because they're paying their food price. Shopping food has doubled in price. Their electricity has nearly tripled in price. Their gas or whatever they have, their car payments, it's all going on. So it's very little excess money to actually go and buy anything in these little shops. So they're still struggling for business. Do you know what I mean? And it's not going to end well, and that to me then, and what we know then in different, I read a lot of books on this as well, and it is that it's a transfer of wealth.
Yeah.
And so all these bigger organizations, companies, like the Amazons and all these places, they were getting all the shopping online, and people were doing all that, and all the small places are struggling to survive. You know what I mean? So it's transfer of wealth, and a lot of small businesses are closing and struggling to survive. And the interesting thing about that is as well. So then, of course, we have the hotels, right? So of course, the hotels were absolutely going to struggle since 2020 closure. You know what I mean? Because the whole tourism was stopped, the travelling was stopped, it was all going on. So that would have set them back hugely. And understandably, we can see how they would struggle. It's not easy to have all this debt and then to be able to just not do anything about it. But what did they do? They started taking in these immigrants, didn't they, into the hotel and getting them off, getting the payment off the government. So this was catching on. So this is what's happened. It's happening in my area in Ashbourne as well. It's happening around the country, our beautiful tourist spots, because we got this mass influx of immigrants, unvetted, free flow borders under the Irish government, coming in, and the hotels are taking them all in, and they're getting a huge amount of money for it, And why this is not good for the hotels is because we're all in business. None of us did the dirty on our fellow man to try like, it's like if you have the famine, it's like if your neighbours are starving and you can afford to feed your family, but your neighbours are starving, you're not going to let your neighbours starve. You're going to give them a bit of food. You know what I mean? Because that's the right thing to do. So when the hotels were saying, oh, I'm just going to look after myself and take in these immigrants because I've bills to pay. But sure, we all had bills to pay. Do you know what I mean? And if they had just all said, no, I'm not closing my business. I'm not closing my business. I'm not closing my business. It would have been over. Do you know what I mean? It would have been over. It was a trial run. That first 3 weeks of locking down your business was the government chancing their arm to see how many people would comply. And that was the first nail in the coffin the business owners put in for themselves, you know. But so the only people who are getting, with the hotels then, they were the planning exemption that allows them to change the status of use of the hotel. It was all freed up that they could just take in asylum seekers, you know, and change it from a tourism residence to accommodate asylum seekers. And, you know, that's really, you know, it's really unfair play for people, you know, and we just seen recently Simon Harris say that he's not going to change that legislation because he's going to leave. There's nothing he can do, and he has to leave it like there for the moment, you know. But in giving these hotels that freedom of the planning exemption, it's because they're bringing in more immigrants, asylum seekers. You know, they're bringing them in. They've nowhere to put them, so they have to put them in hotels. You know what I mean? So it's just going to continue and continue, you know, and that's their plans. There is because it's going to continue.
What do you think? And I think we'll finish up on this. In your mind, what is the resolution to a lot of these problems that we're seeing in Ireland?
We have to, it's so far, it's very far gone. We're very, very deep in with the policies and legislations. The EU has everything really, really secured that we actually can do very little at the moment about anything. What I would like to see myself personally is if the whole government system is massively corrupt, but they're, you know, the National Party lads themselves, they're a great bunch of lads, you know, if you never know, if all of the Irish voted for for nationalism, who knows, you know, something might come about it, you know, because their values themselves are pretty good and their policies, and they want to close the borders and they want to repatriate, which has to happen. We have to send some of these people home, a lot of these people home. We're losing our culture. You know, we're losing our heritage. We're losing our Irishness. We're being replaced. We're actually being invaded. You know, so like I have absolutely no problem saying these immigrants, these asylum seekers, they have to be sent home. They're, you know, there's border control for a reason. Yes, we all love to travel. Yes, we'd love to stay in a country and migrate to a different country for a couple of years, maybe. Or there are people who want to go to better countries for sure for their families. I understand that, but has to be controlled. Like, we're a small country. We're 300 miles wide by 360 miles long. You know, these people are coming from continents, Africa, the Middle East, with vast, vast land, you know, mass with billions of people in them. Where is it going to stop? You know, so we have to get some kind of control back. And I do believe the only way is going nationalism. Now, the problem we have with the Irish people at the moment was, I think the working class people, we all thought that Sinn Féin was nationalist. And so they did win a lot of the working class votes there in the last few years. But now they realise that Sinn Féin are not nationalist. In fact, they're direct orders from EU and the Crown. But so it's I think the people have lost faith in nationalism. But I think they need to really think about where they want to be themselves. They need to look at their own situation. They need to, like, batten down hatches, I would say, now in the next few years, you know, watch what's going on in their own house, financially wise. But they need to give the nationalism a chance, or they need to start seeing what's actually going on with these policies and legislations and coming from the EU, taking away our rights and freedoms. And they need to realise you're entitled to be free. You know, we're entitled to be free people in the world. And they need to take pride in that and stand up for that, you know, freedom and justice, you know. And if the Irish government can't give us justice at the moment, we need somebody, if it's the National Party, absolutely, to go in and put legislation in place that's proper based on law. As Joe Ducey said, based on law, proper law.
Well, Jean, thank you so much for travelling up to us.
Not a bother.
And thank you everyone for watching and supporting myself and Darren. And we'll hope to have you on again sometime, Jean. Thank you.
Lovely. No problem at all, James. Thank you so much, lads, for having me, and Brendan as well. It was lovely. Drive was lovely.